After 10 years of love, I wasn't surprised when I found out Ethan cheated. What did surprise me, however, was that he cheated with his own aunt, Willow. On our wedding anniversary, my husband, Ethan, finally agreed to make good on his promise and make up for our missed honeymoon. But as soon as we arrived at the airport, his cell phone buzzed with an urgent text message. After just a glance at the screen, his usually calm brow furrowed in a tight frown. "Darling," he said, "my brother suddenly fell ill and was hospitalized. I have to go see him." He spoke very quickly, and his display of a strong bond of brotherhood made it hard to refuse. I watched his retreating figure disappear into the VIP exit, then tore up the boarding pass in my hand. Tapping my cell phone, I looked at the photos my assistant had sent. His brother was clearly on his honeymoon in Paris with his girlfriend. How could he possibly be in the hospital with a sudden illness? I was determined to find out who he was really going to see. The estate was now lavishly decorated with flowers, an expensive red carpet stretching to the street. I silently stared at the wedding scene before me. Was this a family wedding of his? Then why was he keeping it from me? Along the way, the chatter of the surrounding guests drifted to me. "Did you see him? The groom is so handsome." "He is, isn't he? I heard he rushed back from abroad." "So touching." "And isn't he Ethan of the Hayes family?" Listening to the whispers around me, I frowned. Perhaps it was just a coincidence. But as I stepped through the grand entrance, the MC's voice froze me in my tracks. "Welcome everyone today to the wedding of Mr. Ethan and Ms. Willow." That voice utterly stunned me. Ethan? Willow? Weren't they aunt and nephew? How were they newlyweds now? Could it be a coincidence of names? But the two who then emerged from backstage shattered my illusion completely. Ethan and Willow were arm in arm, looking utterly smitten. Watching's tender expression, my fists slowly clenched. Amidst the cheers of the crowd, his gaze met mine. He instinctively tightened his grip on the hand of the person next to him, and Willow, beside him, flinched. I strode forward and slapped Willow across the face, then turned to Ethan. "Ethan, being the son-in-law of the wealthiest family, the Shaws, isn't enough for you? Playing house with someone else here." Hearing my cold voice, Ethan's face instantly turned ashen. The surrounding guests were startled by my sudden action. Who is this woman? Why is she hitting someone the moment she walks in? Where did this lunatic come from? I scanned the room and scoffed coldly. Lunatic? Is there a problem with a lawful wife confronting the mistress? That single sentence instantly ignited the curiosity of those around me, and everyone turned their intensely curious stares towards Willow. Ethan's face darkened, and he abruptly stepped between Willow and me, saying, "Audrey, I told you there's no future for us. What are you doing?" Before I could fully process what he was saying, Willow stepped forward and declared loudly, "Audrey, I know you still cling to feelings for Ethan because you accepted his financial help, but there's no future for you too. He has always seen you as a sister, and you're just a student from a poor background. You and Ethan are simply from two different worlds." Hearing that, the way people looked at me instantly changed. Oh my God, a charity case? Exactly. I always say, don't just randomly sponsor people. Not only do good intentions backfire, but you end up with a mess. Is this kind of person not in her right mind? Can't she see the difference? I almost laughed at their shamelessness. To save their own face, they would stoop to saying things like that? Fine. So you care about appearances, do you? Ethan, Willow is your aunt, you know, engaging in incest behind my back, and you have the nerve to make such a public display of it? At that, the surrounding crowd let out a collective gasp. Heavens! Weren't they childhood sweethearts? How did the bride and groom become aunt and nephew? Is this for real? Incest? Do the elite circles really play such twisted games? Audrey, what nonsense are you spouting? Ethan said angrily. He grabbed my arm and whispered coldly, "Get out now, and I might still save you some dignity." I sneered, shook his hand off, and retorted coldly, "You'd better focus on how to salvage your own dignity." Willow gently patted Ethan's hand, a smile on her face, and explained to the surrounding guests, "Everyone, Ethan and I are not blood relatives. I was adopted by the Hayes family when I was young, and I've worked hard to get to this point, only now daring to hold his hand. I hope everyone understands." Ethan stepped forward as well and said, "Willow didn't want to bring up her past, but you're an ungrateful scoundrel. And it's my wedding today. If you're not helping, fine, but why are you here stirring up trouble?" Splash! A glass of wine was thrown, hitting me squarely in the face, followed by countless curses. I sneered, raising a hand to wipe the red wine from my face. Ungrateful? That accusation would be better directed at Willow. The three of us were all roughly the same age, the best childhood playmates. But when the Hayes family discovered Ethan wasn't their biological son, they were going to send him back to the orphanage. It was I who begged my parents to adopt him. We grew up together under the same roof. Even after graduation, I funded her startup and helped her build her business from scratch. Willow, knowing Ethan and I were married, still inserted herself into our marriage. She's the real ungrateful wretch. With that thought, I grabbed a glass of wine nearby and threw it directly at her face. This glass of wine is for you, Willow. Back then, when you begged my family for shelter at our door, crying, you weren't like this. You cried and promised to repay me for the rest of your life. Now you're getting involved with my husband, your nephew? Is this how you repay me? The venue fell silent for a moment, only to erupt in even louder mockery. Wait. The corporation? Ha ha ha, I wondered where this crazy woman got her nerve. Turns out she's trying to impersonate the daughter of the wealthiest family, the Shaws. She probably knows the Shaw's daughter rarely stays in the country, so she's putting on airs by association. A smug smile curved Willow's lips as she listened to the laughter around her. Audrey, you didn't really think changing your name would make you the eldest daughter of the Shaw, did you? All these years, I pitied your poor family background, so I never said anything about Ethan sponsoring you. But what you've done today is too much. Do you know how much gossip and rumors this will cause Ethan? Hearing her words, the people around quickly agreed. Don't worry, we're all witnesses. This crazy woman not only rushed in and hit someone, but she also impersonated someone. Ethan chuckled reassuringly at the sight, then pointed a finger at me and said, if I'd known this, I should have used that money to help stray dogs. Where are the guards? Throw this lunatic out. Hearing that, the security guards, who had been waiting nearby, swarmed me. I grabbed a bottle of red wine from the table and smashed it on the floor. I dare any of you. Ethan, have you considered what your parents would say if they found out about this? At my words, Ethan's face changed. Arthur and Eleanor had always held me in high regard, and not just because I was the eldest daughter of the Shaw. It was because the Shaw had single-handedly supported the Hayes family's rise. For these two to dare to hold a wedding here behind their parents' backs, they were truly digging their own graves. I quirked my lips and said coldly, the corporation has a great debt of gratitude from the Hayes family. What do you think they'll do to Willow, their adopted daughter, when why find out? Willow's face fell. She was about to speak, but was interrupted by the announcement from the entrance. Mr. Arthur and Mrs. Eleanor have arrived. Everyone turned their heads at the announcement, and Arthur and Eleanor walked in slowly. Seeing the mess strewn across the floor, Arthur's face instantly darkened. He looked up at the three of us on the stage, his gaze filled with anger. I smiled. Ethan had really dug his own grave this time. Mr. Arthur, you've come at just the right time. Ethan, this time Before I could finish, a resounding slap landed on my face. You lunatic again. Didn't I tell you last time to stay away from my son? Feeling the stinging pain on my face, I froze. I turned my head, seeing mocking smiles on Ethan and Willow's faces. They had known all along. The originally solemn wedding venue was punctuated by two soft chuckles. Everyone was laughing at my expense. Mrs. Eleanor also pointed at me, her voice sharp as she said, Ethan sponsoring your education all these years wasn't enough? You still dream of marrying him? Dream on. Seeing my shocked expression, Arthur scoffed disdainfully, then slowly leaned closer and whispered, I know what you're thinking, but you'd best face reality. Audrey, your father has been dead for 3 years. The corporation is leaderless, and it's only a matter of time before the Hayes family takes over. Get out now, and after they're married, I might even let you see Ethan again. I nearly burst out laughing at his words. Who said my father was dead? Years ago, he was attacked by enemies and has been recovering abroad ever since. The corporation outwardly appears leaderless, but in secret, my father still maintains full control. The domestic media had been making baseless conjectures, and he actually believed my father was dead. But that's fine. I finally get to see these people for who they really are. Mr. Arthur, that's quite the show of power, but you probably don't know much about the Shaw's affairs. Ethan's voice rang out from behind me. Audrey, even if you are a member of the Shaw family today, so what? The corporation is already on its last legs. If you're going to stubbornly maintain appearances, at least pick a better act, right? Hearing that, the surrounding guests also burst out laughing and said, this kind of person probably only knows about the wealthiest family, the Shaws, and thinks she's clever, assuming no one would dare expose her. Exactly. Who knows where she got such outdated news? The corporation has been visibly declining these past few years. Do you really expect a small-town girl like her to know about the demise of the head of the Shaw family? Don't make me laugh, haha. I calmly looked at Ethan and said, word for word, Ethan, you'd better think carefully about who gave the Hayes family what it has today. Ethan fell silent for a moment at my words, then Willow quickly stepped forward and said, it's been handed down through generations of hard work by the Hayes family. Are you implying it was you who gave it to them? Aren't the major pillar industries across the country all built through the Hayes family's diligent efforts? How ridiculous. Back then, the Hayes family was just a small manufacturing company. Only after partnering with my family did it steadily expand with investments from the Shah. Now these people actually believe they achieved all of this on their own. They're nothing but a bunch of ungrateful wretches. Seeing how persistent I was, the surrounding guests couldn't help but wonder. Her clothes look like high-end items, don't they? They do. Could what she's saying really be true? You really can't say for sure. Otherwise, where would a poor student get the money for such an outfit? For enough. Why would you believe a lunatic? Ethan said angrily, then pointed at my clothes, his voice cold. Audrey, all these years the Hayes family gave you so much money, hoping you would study hard. But what did you do? Why? That money? You bought an entire outfit of designer brands, came to my wedding to ruin my reputation, and this is how you repay me? This furious accusation silenced all the guests. Mrs. Eleanor also glared at me angrily and said, strip her of those clothes. She doesn't deserve to wear anything from the Hayes family. I watched the approaching security guards, my brows furrowed deeply. How much money could your Hayes family possibly give me? I'll give it all back to you. Seeing me finally back down, Ethan smirked triumphantly. Pay back? You ungrateful wretch, isn't any money you pay back just what we gave you in the first place? I looked at the triumphant look on his face, then gritted my teeth and said, name a figure. I'll pay 3 times that. Hearing that, the entire venue erupted in uncontrollable laughter. Did I hear that right? This imposter wants to pay 3 times the amount? Maybe she plans to sell her parents' organs. I endured the surrounding mockery, my gaze fixed on Ethan. He looked at me, and with a disdainful tone, he uttered a figure. 50 million. The money the Hayes family has spent on you over the years, 3 times that is 150 million. Can you afford it? The entire venue fell silent. Everyone was stunned by the figure. That much money? The family really went all out. No wonder this charity case dared to court death. The family really spoiled this ungrateful wretch. She took so much money, and shamelessly claims she'll pay it back. Her entire family's compensation if they were hit by a car wouldn't even be 50 million, would it? Ethan looked at me triumphantly and said, what do you say? If you can't pay, then get out. The family is kind-hearted, we'll just consider it like we kept a pet. I actually laughed out of anger. They really had the nerve to say that. My father had just returned to the country yesterday. I'd like to see if they'd dare accept the money once I handed it over. After sending a message to my father and receiving a reply that he'd arrive in 10 minutes, I put down my cell phone. Willow slowly walked over from the side. Audrey, why bother? I looked at her with icy eyes. She reached out and gently patted my face, then leaned close to my ear and whispered, 150 million. That's all of the Shah's current cash flow, isn't it? I advise you to stop stubbornly maintaining appearances. Accept reality. Your father was long ago devoured by fish. Hearing that, I grabbed a nearby bottle of red wine and smashed it violently on her head. I gripped her throat tightly. I haven't even settled the score with you, and you dare come seeking a beating. As I was about to continue, the surrounding security guards pinned me down. Audrey, you murderer. Why did you hurt Willow? Arthur also roared, cut off her hand. See if she dares to act out again. The surrounding security guards brutally held me to the ground, and a sharp blade glinted menacingly. My father will be here any minute, don't you dare. Arthur sneered. Still defiant, let her suffer a little. The moment he finished speaking, the dagger instantly pierced my palm. The sound of bone snapping echoed, and I gritted my teeth, refusing to make a sound. Arthur was about to order them to continue, but he was interrupted by a roaring sound. The guests present all looked up. Is that the corporation's helicopter? 5. The helicopter's roar made Arthur's face darken. He glared at me and said, do you think calling people will save you? I forced out the words through gritted teeth, why don't you see who's here? Arthur, I hear you've been looking for me all these years? The authoritative voice resonated throughout the entire venue. Everyone stared in shock at my father's face. Oh my God! Isn't that the wealthiest man in the country? How could he be here? Isn't he dead? Exactly. I saw news of his death recently, I even commented with flowers. Unlike the other guests, everyone from the Hayes family had an ashen look on their faces. They stared in shock at my father as he walked in, and Eleanor said in a panic, "No. Impossible. How could you have survived? Back then, you clearly bribed me to frame the head of the family and lead him to his death, didn't you?" The person beside my father slowly stepped forward and said. Upon seeing this person, not only I, but Eleanor and Arthur too, their eyes widened as if they'd seen a ghost. You're not dead." My heart was also filled with shock at this moment, because it was none other than Alfred, the butler, who had drowned at sea trying to save my father all those years ago. "Uncle, you're still alive?" Looking at my face, Alfred smiled and patted my head, saying, "It's been so many years, miss, you've grown up." "Audrey, stop playing tricks. You think finding a few actors in makeup can fool us? I'm telling you, impossible." Arthur's old face was flushed crimson with rage, but his gaze still avoided Uncle beside him. Seeing him stubbornly refusing to accept defeat, Uncle sneered, then strode over to Arthur. "So much for sworn brotherhood, eh? Better to deceive and defraud, wouldn't you say, Arthur? Do you remember this scar?" Looking at the scar on Uncle's body, Arthur was speechless for a long time. My gaze also froze. It was a terribly dangerous wound, a winding scar that stretched from his abdomen all the way to his neck. The twisted skin silently spoke of the perils he had faced back then. "It hurts so much, Arthur. This scar truly hurts so much. Back then, you deceived me and the head of the family with false information. If the head of the family hadn't been quick-witted at the last moment, we really would have been framed by you scum." The cold voice was like a chilling wind from hell, silently recounting the grievances of those years. It wasn't over yet. Today, right now, retribution has arrived. No. This is impossible, you were clearly dead, clearly dead. Arthur seemed unable to be. They are such a blow and became completely distraught. "Ha ha ha, Arthur, you're still the same as ever. Back then, to avoid risking your own life, you only sent your subordinates. When the head of the family's body wasn't found after the incident, you convinced yourself that he had died in international waters. But I want to ask, after all these years, have you truly slept soundly?" The words had barely left his mouth when Arthur's phone rang. Seeing his hesitant expression, Uncle let out a cold laugh. "Go on, answer it. Maybe it's good news?" An ominous premonition surged in Arthur's heart, and he shakily answered the phone. After only 10 seconds, his expensive cell phone slipped from his grasp, falling to the ground, its screen shattering into a spiderweb pattern. With a thud, Arthur directly knelt before Uncle. "Dad, what are you doing? Why are you kneeling to him? The family doesn't owe them anything." Arthur, who always protected his son, for the first time, showed a ruthless look in his eyes. He turned and slapped Ethan hard across the face. "Shut up. If it weren't for you, a good-for-nothing, framing Ms. Willow, we wouldn't have fallen to this state." Ethan was stunned by the slap. He had no idea why his father had become like this. After doing all this, Arthur then knee-crawled all the way to my side. Watching this middle-aged man, considerably older than myself, kneeling beside me, I awkwardly shifted my feet away. "Arthur, why go to such lengths?" Seeing kneeling before me, even the dullest person around understood what was happening. President is kneeling to that crazy woman? Then everything she said must be true. Willow watched everything before her, her face ashen. She had only one thought in her mind. "It's over. Everything is over." 6 Arthur sighed and, lowering his head, said, "Willow, Uncle will swallow his pride and call you Willow one more time. I only ask you one thing, do you still have feelings for Ethan?" I looked at him, somewhat confused, wondering why he was suddenly asking this. But looking at Ethan nearby, blood was still steadily flowing from the wound on his hand. "Everything today has shown me who he truly is. I don't love him anymore." Hearing that, Arthur actually kowtowed to me on the spot. Before his forehead could touch the ground, Uncle kicked him over. "Old geezer, you're shameless. I'm worried you'll bring bad luck to our miss." "Willow, listen to Uncle. You can feel however you want about Ethan, but he only made mistakes. It's not worth him losing his life over. Don't let us old geezers' affairs involve you, the younger generation. Uncle begs you, spare my son." Even if Ethan were a pig, he would have realized something was wrong by now. He asked, his voice uncertain, "Dad, what's going on? What are you talking about?" My father's cold voice rang out. "Arthur, now you remember not involving the younger generation? When you ordered someone to harm my daughter just now, why didn't you remember then? Ethan, did your father never tell you what happened back then?" Hearing my father's words, Arthur knee-crawled all the way to my father and said in a panic, "No, Richard, I beg you, all the dirty deeds were done by me. Why tell the child all this?" Arthur, will bear the consequences alone for what I've done. Humph, now you're scared? My father sneered, his gaze sweeping across the entire venue as he spoke. Back then, Arthur, to swallow up our Shaw's core assets, deceived me with false information and lured me into international waters. Hearing that, everyone's ears perked up. Even though everyone present was of high status, who doesn't love gossip about the wealthiest man in the country? Stop talking. Arthur suddenly stood up, his eyes fixed on my father. Uncle's gaze turned cold, and he kicked him in the stomach. After being knocked to the ground, Arthur tried to get up again, but Uncle held him down with a foot. Seeing the situation go south, the surrounding security guards all froze, not daring to speak. But do you know what he used to make me trust him? My father sneered. Arthur had now closed his eyes, his whole body trembling as if remembering a painful memory. This man, he used his wife, who had just given birth, as a bargaining chip to gain my trust and make me board that ship. At these words, everyone froze, but Ethan reacted the strongest. He stared at Arthur in disbelief and said, "Father, what is going on? What is Uncle talking about? I don't understand." My father glanced at Ethan and said softly, "Ethan, the woman next to you is not your biological mother at all." "Impossible. You're lying. How could she not be my biological mother?" As he spoke, Ethan grabbed the mother beside him and demanded hysterically, "Mom, what is going on?" Ethan's mother, realizing her slip of the tongue, clamped her hand over her mouth, her face filled with terror, and stopped speaking. "My goodness? She's actually not his biological mother? Though our circle is chaotic, to have the mistress raise the legal wife's child as her own. President truly has a unique mind. Am I the only one who thinks this is a huge deal?" Ethan looked as if his soul had been sucked out of him. He murmured in disbelief, "No, it's all fake, my mom. She is my mom." But the eldest young lady that his mother had accidentally blurted out just now, and her guilty expression, all silently and cruelly revealed the truth. "Your father personally put your mother on that ship back then. When I escaped, your mother could have survived, but because she had just given birth and was weak, she was left forever in those waters." "Impossible. Fake, fake. You're lying to me. Audrey, where did you find these actors? They're so unprofessional." I looked at the tears in his eyes and silently sighed. I didn't know much about what happened back then either. All I knew was that after my father barely escaped death, he told me not to act abnormally. He wanted me to pretend he was dead, to use this incident to hide and find the real culprit behind it. So I listened to him, held a normal funeral, traveled abroad for business, and gradually faded from the domestic scene. But one day, he suddenly came to ask me if I was still with Ethan. I didn't understand what he meant then. All I knew was that my father sighed with a complicated look in his eyes and said that if Ethan was a good boy, I should treat him well. I understood now. Everything made sense. Seeing my pitying gaze, Ethan completely broke down. He knelt beside Arthur, shaking the unresponsive Arthur and saying, "Dad, stop being silent. What is all this? What is going on? How could how could she be dead? This is all a lie, right?" The more he spoke, the clearer the memories in his mind became. Why he was so beloved by his father since childhood, why whatever he wanted, his father would give it to him if possible. Why there were always a few days each year when his father would be unhappy, sitting alone in a corner, staring into the distance for a very long time. And why his mother was always so cautious at home, not even going to certain places. "Ethan, I'm sorry for what I did to your mother." Hearing that, the onlookers sighed in dismay. Looking at this, President must have had his reasons. But the Hayes family's young master is also pitiful. Indeed, to have been with a mother for so long, only to suddenly be told one day she isn't your biological mother, anyone would be heartbroken to hear that. Every family has its unspoken difficulties, but life still has to go on. Look, Ethan's expression is so pitiful. These words almost destroyed all of Ethan's illusions, and everything from his past gradually crumbled. His life had transformed into something barely recognizable in just one day. "So Richard's words are true? You really sent my mother onto that ship? You really personally killed my mother?" Arthur said through gritted teeth, "It was just an accident. The people I sent protect your mother were discovered." "Shut up. I don't want to hear it." "Why? I just want to know why." Arthur, with an unknown burst of strength, suddenly broke free from Uncle's hold, pushed Ethan away and said, "Do you think I wanted this? Do you think I didn't love your mother?" Back then, the Hayes family's industry chain had problems, and there was a huge cash flow deficit. With no other choice, I listened to those people and used false information to lure him onto the ship. Otherwise, the entire Hayes family would have been ruined. Those people promised me it would be fine, so that's why I sent your mother, and I felt terrible about it. Is Arthur talking about that incident from back then? Oh my god, no way? Is it really that one? I think it's possible. Otherwise, where would they get such power? Ethan, on the other side, quietly listened to Arthur finish, then said in a cold voice, "If there were no problems, why didn't you go yourself?" Arthur was instantly stumped by that question. A look of embarrassment appeared on his face. I. Let me say it for you. Uncle said coldly, because you, Arthur, are a cowardly spineless man who fears death. You're afraid of death, but you care about appearances. And then you pretend to be deeply emotional, claiming you never intended to send Ethan's mother onto that ship. I didn't. Slap. A resounding slap landed on Arthur's face. Ethan, his eyes bloodshot, stared at him and said, word for word, "You scum, you don't deserve to be my father." Ethan, how can you speak to your father like that? Willow suddenly said, then she pulled Ethan and said, "You sincerely apologize to Audrey. We were just joking around today, we didn't expect the joke to go a bit too far. Ask not to mind it." Humph. Ethan shook off her hand. He could clearly see what she was trying to do. Seeing the Shah hadn't declined, she immediately wanted to grovel and repair relations. Earlier, she had held his hand, saying she didn't care what others said, only wanting to be with him. Now, it seemed, it was nothing more than a lie to deceive him. Though had acted absurdly, he wasn't a fool. But in this moment, now that he understood everything, he felt like a complete and utter idiot. If you were afraid of death, afraid of the Shah causing you trouble, then you shouldn't have come looking for me in the first place. Ethan said angrily, then he turned to my father and said, "Uncle, I was wrong about Audrey and me, but Audrey was also at fault first. From now on, Audrey and I are done. As for my father and the entire Hayes family, you can do whatever you deem fit." In that moment, Ethan, standing before my father, seemed more like the head of the Hayes family than Arthur, who was lying on the ground. My father chuckled softly, looking at him, and said, "Aren't you afraid I'll bankrupt the Hayes family? What will you do then?" Hearing my father say that, Ethan methodically took off his watch and suit jacket, placing them on the table. "If it were for money, I would kneel before Audrey right now and beg you to spare the Hayes family once. But I don't care about that. Without the Hayes family, Ethan can work odd jobs, deliver packages. Whatever it takes, I won't starve." My father seemed surprised that Ethan would say such a thing and glanced at him unexpectedly. But I couldn't stand still. I quickly walked over to Ethan and said, "What do you mean? What do you mean I was at fault first?" Ethan looked at me, a hint of confusion in his eyes, but mostly anger. "You know what you did." I was equally puzzled. When did I ever wrong him? Seeing my continued confusion, Ethan couldn't help but pull out his cell phone, unlock it, and toss it to me. "These are messages Willow sent me over the past year. Take a good look yourself." I took the cell phone and looked at the videos. Inside were videos of me with different men. But the crucial thing was, I didn't know any of these people, and I had never been to the places in the videos. Feeling increasingly strange, I paused the video to examine it closely, then I threw the cell phone directly at Ethan. "Are you crazy? You cheated. What right do you have to throw things at me?" I didn't speak. Instead, my fingers flew across the cell phone screen, typing. The surrounding guests saw this scene and began to whisper. "It's not that we love to gossip, but isn't Ms. Audrey being a bit?" Exactly. This kind of thing isn't something everyone just tacitly understands. Once found out, you should just accept it. Why is she getting so angry and flustered? I turned my head and said angrily, "I've put up with you people for too long. You have to comment on everything? Are you a critic? If you want to watch, watch silently, and shut your mouths." Ethan looked at me like that and sighed in disappointment. "Audrey, the past is the past. I don't intend to blame you for anything. It's just that I was too foolish, constantly searching for so-called love." He looked at me coldly and uttered that classic line. "Women are all no good." I pinched his face to stop him from talking. Ethan's coherent emotional outburst was suddenly interrupted by me, and he somewhat indignantly swatted my hand away. His eyes glared at me furiously. "Hold on a moment, take a look at this." I showed him my cell phone screen. In the video, he was walking peacefully down the street when suddenly a monster appeared. He then pulled a transformation device from his pocket, instantly transforming into Ultraman and fighting the monster. Every detail in the video was incredibly realistic and clear. If not for the absurd plot, it would have seemed like it was really happening. Ethan's angry gaze slowly turned to confusion, then gradually cleared. I released my grip and said impatiently, "Do you understand now?" Ethan said with a hint of defiance, "How can you be so sure all those videos are AI generated? You can get them professionally authenticated, you know." My single sente. NCE silenced him. He picked up his phone from the ground and operated it for a while. 2 minutes later, the strong facade he had maintained slowly began to crack. Seeing his lips start to quiver and tears welling up in his eyes, I frowned. "Dad, we need to talk privately." "Everyone, out." My father's voice rang out, his gaze slowly sweeping across the room. The guests were already on edge after my earlier outburst. Now, under my father's scrutiny, fearful of being remembered, they quickly covered their faces and scurried out. Uncle, meanwhile, grabbed Willow by the arm. "Looks like you're the scumbag stirring up trouble, huh?" "It wasn't me, really it wasn't." "Still playing tough, huh?" "Don't worry, you'll talk eventually." Arthur twisted his lips into a cruel smile and dragged Willow out. Once the crowd dispersed, Ethan could no longer hold himself together. His legs gave out, and he sank to the ground, sobbing. The sound was muffled and very quiet, but it filled my heart with a heavy sadness. I gave a helpless smile, then knelt beside him and said, "Still crying after making a mistake?" Ethan whimpered, "Am I really that stupid?" "Yeah, super stupid." Upon hearing this, Ethan gave me a tearful, reproachful glare, but his swollen eyes made his face contort in pain instead, twisting his lips. I was amused by his appearance. "Why didn't you ask me?" "Ask you what?" "Ask you why you slept with another man?" "How could I possibly ask that? I tested you so many times, and you never noticed?" It was only then that I suddenly recalled everything with a jolt of realization. In the past year, Ethan had suddenly become a mind reader. Every time I returned from a business trip, he would eagerly ask if anything interesting had happened. And for some reason, he had inexplicably developed a fondness for truth or dare. Yet he only ever chose truth. Whenever I lost, the dare was for me to do a blindfolded night run on the highway. And the truth was always to share a secret. At this realization, everything became clear to me. "I thought you were going crazy. You're so annoying." I gave another helpless smile, stood up, and walked towards the door. Ethan watched me leave, his hands tightly gripping his shirt, his wet eyes silently fixed on me. Not leaving yet? What are you doing squatting there?" I turned back, looking at him in surprise, as tears instantly blurred his vision. Feeling the solid impact as he threw himself into my arms, I smiled wryly. "There's nothing between me and her. She's always wanted something, but I never agreed." Ethan's voice was muffled. I lowered my head and stroked his hair. "Let's go home. I'll ask Mom to make some braised short ribs." "Can we not go back, or at least not yet?" I looked at Ethan's awkward expression, knowing he might be a bit embarrassed. "So, what do you want to do?" Ethan glanced at the chaotic wedding venue around them, then turned to look at the house behind him. Finally, he turned to me, his gaze complex, and said, "I want to go see." I leaned in closer. He suddenly tightened his grip on my hand, as if using all his strength, and said, "I want to go see my mom." "Okay, I'll go with you." Thank you for watching today's story. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it with your friends. We look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments section. Feel free to share your opinions, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more exciting stories. See you next time.